President Trump.
And Maura, how do you think rank and file Republicans, Senator House, are digesting those numbers and lots of others that they can find that are similar?
We're going to see the number that says that a year or so later that they'll really know the impact and say, OK, that's going to tee me up for what my midterm will look like. Right. And then the messaging aspect of it, if you're messaging on the patriotism aspect, so you're saying that, which Trump has done a pretty good job of saying, we need fair trade. We want to make sure we're not being taken advantage of by other countries. And that kind of rhetoric will probably be repeated by a lot of the rank and file members. But they have these concerns from constituents directly, especially those who are asking, about the manufacturing aspect, because it's not as though we can manufacture everything that is on these lists of things that are being tariffed. So it does cause concern. But for right now, they're all kind of in a holding pattern, and they're going to stay lockstep behind President Trump.
Joel, I want to read to you something that the Wall Street Journal editorialized about today, talking about the exemptions and the buckets and whether they're temporary or not and some of the confusion therein. I want to read from the editorial board this morning. Exemptions would also undermine the administration's legal justification that is tariffs are needed to meet a national emergency. Imports of glassware and umbrellas from China are an emergency, but imports of electronics aren't. All of this exposes the political nature of tariffs. It goes on to talk about those who have to try to live in this political environment of tariffs. Too bad, too, if you're a small manufacturer that relies on a component from China but can't afford a K Street lobbyist. Joel, does that in any way suggest to you some political danger zones for this administration?
I think what it suggests to me is that corruption might be a word that you might hear thrown around when the president's opponents talk about this policy, mostly because I think that this type of policy, the way they're applying it, is ripe for Donald Trump and for the people around him to have people come to heel, to have the economy come to heel to his whims, to have very wealthy lobbyists, to have the donor class be able to get a phone in to the Oval Office, whereas regular Americans can't. And I will tell you, Democrats and the president's opponents will make that very, very clear to voters as they are thinking about how this is impacting them and their bottom line over the next few years of this administration.
All right, Maura, get ready. Two for you. One, the first one. I have resisted the temptation to invoke Stephen A. Smith's name on this program, leaving him largely to confrontations with LeBron James and things related to the National Basketball Association. But he was on a Sunday show yesterday, another network, and said people are begging him to think about running for president. Begging him. Wow. Okay. And he also name-checked some Democrats he thinks might be better positioned. Let's listen.
Whether it's Westmore, Governor Westmore, who I know, or Governor Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania, who I know, Andrew Cuomo, who I had the pleasure of interviewing, who's trying to get back in things to be the next mayor of New York, etc. I see a lot of people that obviously and clearly are more qualified than me.
Key phrase there, who I know. Maura, Stephen A. Smith.
What this whole announcement and this interview says to me is that the Democratic Party doesn't have leadership, and he's pointing that out, right? He said in that interview and in subsequent interviews that there is no leadership, there's no vision, and so he's not going to rule out a run. But this just shows you that the playing field essentially for Democrats is wide open. And at this moment, they need leadership. They need someone to direct their efforts. Right now, you obviously have Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders out there trying to rally some Democrats. But he's calling out the fact that have been issues on the left, just as there have been on the right. He's not happy with Donald Trump's tariff policy and the rollout, I would say. So I think that this, to me, it just says that it could really go to anyone. Anyone may throw their hat in the ring at this point. And I will say on the Republican side, it's sort of how we got Donald Trump. But so it's not so far out of left field. If Donald Trump can be president, so can you.
Major, you got to let me get in on this one.
No, hold on.
It's a two-parter.
Hold on. A two-parter. I promise, Maura, a two-parter. So someone who might want to suggest he's ready for that leadership role, Ro Khanna, Democratic member of the House. Let's listen to him over the weekend.
I mean, it's like I understand they have 19th century policies of McKinley, but they need to have a 21st century understanding of the economy. And then they're saying, OK, you really want to do this? The iPhone will cost $1,600 to $1,700, but we're not going to be able to bring it back to the United States.
Maura, there you go. Ro Khanna.
And what he's saying there, again, is something that I've been concerned by, which is the rollout of these tariff policies. If Trump, his team had been consistent and had all of this kind of lined up and explained to the American people, here's what we need to do in the short term, here's what we need to do in the long term, and not going back and forth and ping-ponging back between rolling out tariffs at X number and then lowering it to 10 and then saying, well, this pause in manufacturing or tariff for electronics is for 90 days or it's short-lived. Again, this inconsistency is what's frustrating to people. And Stephen A. Smith, I believe, talked about that and brought that up as one of the reasons why he's considering a run. And I will let Joel go ahead and
Joel, take us home.
I'll take
us
you
home,
home
Joel.
with this. A couple of things. One, we are in the reality era of politics. And I take Mara's point. I don't actually think this is about lack of leadership in the Democratic Party. I think this is about where the American public is. There are three things that Stephen A. Smith has: authenticity, confidence, and familiarity. That is also what Donald Trump has as well. And I do think that we are entering an era, and we are within an era of politics where that is a currency, that is in very, very high regard and high premium with the electorate. And whether it's Stephen A. Smith, Mark Cuban, or any other stand-in, I think you're going to see a lot of non-traditional, non-conventional folks throw their hat into the ring politically.
Joel Payne, Maura Gillespie, coming to us from New York. Thanks so very much.